Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, you can't seem to keep a woman interested? Maybe she seems interested at first, but now it feels like she's slipping away, or worse, like she doesn't see your value at all. And you can't understand why it keeps happening. Here's what I've noticed. Most guys unknowingly sabotage their chances with women, and then they blame things like looks or money when they get rejected. But I've coached guys for 16 years now. And the superficial things play a very small role in whether or not a girl stays attracted to you. When a woman doesn't feel that next level of attraction for you, it's almost always because you're missing 5 key behaviors. These are 5 behaviors that instantly earn her respect, and they make you irresistible, the kind of guy that she chooses, desires, and chases. In this video, I'm gonna break down the 5 behaviors that high-value men use to spark attraction, earn respect, and make her see you differently. The best part, these are things that you can start doing today. No tricks, no games, just simple, tiny little shifts that almost immediately and undeniably impact how a woman feels about you. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio, and if there's one thing that I've learned coaching guys over the years, it's that most men don't realize the small, subtle ways that they lower their value in a woman's eyes. They think it's about saying the perfect thing or having a specific look, but the truth, it's not about what you say. It's about how you show up. So take Matt, for example. Matt's a smart, successful guy, a guy that on the surface most people would think does pretty well with women, but every date fizzles out after the second or third meetup. He keeps asking me, every time we talk, he asks me, what am I doing wrong? So he recounts a few moments from his last date, and I spend a few minutes skimming through the texts that he had sent the woman, and I could immediately tell the problem wasn't what he was saying or how funny he was or what job he had. It was the way he was carrying himself. Something that men have trouble grasping because of the way that we're wired is that looks aren't nearly as important to women as they are to us. It's hard for us to wrap our brain around this. Men are very turned on visually. We watch porn and we stare at body parts to get aroused, but women don't watch porn. Think about that. With women, it's the invisible things that attract them and the invisible things that turn them on. This is why I call it the invisible game. If you think of an iceberg, there's 20% that's above the surface, but then there's 80% below the surface that you can't see. And it's the 80% below the surface that's invisible. And that's what does the damage. And it's what wins or loses the game for you in dating. The invisible 80% are the small behaviors that signal confidence, that signal value, that signal masculinity. These are the things that you can't fake, but you can absolutely learn to improve. So in this video, I'm breaking down 5 behaviors that instantly raise your value in a woman's eyes. Each one builds on the last tip, and tip number 5 is the glue that ties them all together. So make sure you stick around all the way to the end. So let's get into it. Let's start with tip number 1, which is it's all about her assumptions. Here's a concept that most guys overlook. She doesn't respond to what you tell her about yourself. This is really important. She responds to the assumptions that she makes about you. There's a saying that we believe very little of what we're told, but almost everything that we assume. And it's a perfect lens for understanding how women feel attraction towards a man. Think about it. She's not consciously analyzing every word you say. Instead, her brain is picking up on subtle cues about how you carry yourself, how others respond to you, and the vibe that you bring into every interaction. And from those cues, she begins to make snap judgments, assumptions about who you are, how much value you have, how much attention she should be giving you. Now, here's where something like preselection comes in. So preselection is the concept that you're perceived as more desirable by a woman when you're already desired by other women. We all kind of know that, right? Women want the guy that other women want. It's called preselection. And a lot of guys make a mistake with this, right? So the idea is that if she sees you around other women who are smiling, engaged, and comfortable around you, she assumes there's a reason for that. You don't have to brag. You don't have to show off. She's already filling in the blanks. For example, let's say you're at a group hangout and she notices you casually teasing one of your female friends. Her mind immediately starts turning to, why does this girl seem so at ease with him? Is he one of those guys who naturally gets along with women? Do I have to worry about all this competition? Those assumptions build attraction without you having to do anything obvious. On the flip side, if you're constantly trying to prove that you're cool, right? This is the mistake a lot of guys make. I mentioned that a lot of guys make a mistake with pre-selection. Well, if you're trying to prove that you're pre-selected, if you're trying to prove that other girls like you, maybe by name dropping your ex-girlfriend constantly, or talking about how pretty she was, or trying to insinuate verbally that other women in your office or through your social circle like you, or by posting try-hard photos with women, she'll assume the opposite. When you do these things, she actually assumes that you're insecure and you're trying to overcompensate. This is one of the dangers when we teach the scrambler to students, because a lot of times students will learn the scrambler and they'll think, well, I got to make her jealous. And they do everything on a very obvious level. And the problem is, when you're being obvious, you create the wrong assumption. If the idea is, I need to make a woman feel like she doesn't have power over me, she assumes that every little move you're doing is to show her that she doesn't have power over you. Well, the assumption she makes is, I have a lot of power over him, right? It's the same thing with every area of what you're doing to attract a woman. If you tell a woman that you've got this huge social circle and tons of women who want to date you, but you text her constantly, you seek validation, you seem overly eager, your schedule is always available whenever she contacts you, she won't believe you. Instead, she'll assume based on your behavior that you're needy and insecure. On the flip side, if she has to work a bit to get a compliment from you, or you don't immediately approve of everything that she says, or it's hard to get time with you, your schedule's busy and you legitimately, when she wants to hang out, you legitimately have to not be available all the time, she'll assume that you must be dealing with attractive women and it's not really a big deal for you. And pre-selection is an attraction trigger, right? And when she assumes those things, pre-selection kicks in and it works to your advantage. Do you get the subtle difference? Because this is really important. I think it's one of the big mistakes guys make, is they don't understand that the real game is invisible. The minute you make what you're doing visible to her, it actually creates the wrong assumption. So whatever you want her to believe about you, it has to be done in a way that she does not realize. This is why when it's actually authentic, it's more powerful, right? If you really have a life where you're busy and other women actually are after you and you do have a lot of options, it's easier. But if you're not at that point yet, right? A lot of guys are struggling. A lot of guys might be in a slump. A lot of guys might have come out of a relationship and they don't have a lot of options at this point. Well, if you go out of your way to try to, verbally tell her you do, it's going to backfire. But if you lead her to believe it through your actions, that's where it becomes powerful. The visible game is, let's say, you sending her a lot of texts or you being sporadic with your texting, right? That's the visible. She can see it. When I say visible, I mean she can see your text coming in, she can see your text not coming in. That's why we call it the visible game. The invisible game is the assumption she's making about your behavior and what it tells her about you. It's not like, oh, he's texting, or no, oh, he's not texting. It's what's going through her mind. Why isn't he texting? Or what does it mean that he's texting me 50 times a day? Well, it means that I'm probably his only option. I'm probably out of his league. It's the assumption she's making. So the big lesson here to start with is focus less on what you're saying and more on how you're showing up. Let her draw her own conclusions, because the assumptions she makes are far more powerful than anything that you're going to tell her. And this idea of assumptions doesn't just apply to this idea of pre-selection. I'm using that as sort of a way to explain it. It applies throughout everything, right? And throughout all the tips that I'm going to give you in this video, they're all based on this idea of how your behavior leads her to assume certain things. Whether it's holding a strong frame, leading the vibe, or being unapologetically yourself. All of these things can shape the assumptions that she makes about you and how to change how she sees you and how much value women place on you. So let's get into tip number 2. Tip number 2 is holding a strong masculine frame. So I went a little deeper on this in a recent video called The Masculine Frame. I suggest that you watch it if you haven't, but I want to simplify it a bit in this video. Because I see a lot of comments from guys saying that, oh, you're telling us that I need to pretend I don't care. I just need to be stoic. I need to look disinterested. I basically have to play a game that I don't really like her. And that's the wrong idea when we talk about masculine frame. It means that I'm not getting it through to a lot of guys correctly. So I want to kind of simplify it a little bit. It's kind of shows how far a lot of us have veered away from masculinity, that when somebody tells us that we should act this way, our reaction is, why can't I just be myself? Masculinity isn't about trying. This is what you have to understand when I say the masculine frame. It's not about trying, it's about being. It's about operating from a place of certainty and calm no matter what's happening around you. It's not about playing games, it's about being. The problem is most of us have been so socially conditioned to be a way that really isn't aligned with this masculinity. Here's what most guys don't realize. Women test you. They test you very often, and they test you unconsciously to see if your frame is going to crumble under pressure. So what's your frame? Again, your frame is the mental fortress that holds your identity, your beliefs, and your confidence, right? So imagine that you have all these things, who you are, your beliefs, your confidence, and it's got this fortress around it, and it's holding it all together. It's the invisible backbone that says, this is who I am, and I'm not bending to seek your approval. Well, when your frame is strong, you don't overreact. You don't explain yourself. You don't crack under scrutiny. You don't let a woman intimidate you. On the other hand, when it's weak, you flinch, you overcompensate, and you try to prove yourself. And trust me, a woman can spot the difference. She can spot it very differently. She might tease you, right? So one way she'll do it is she'll tease you. She'll see if you can handle it, if you playfully push back, or if it sets you into a weird mood. If you start defending yourself or over-explaining yourself when she's teasing you, she assumes that you're not as confident as you're trying to appear to be. But if you can hold your frame with that calm amusement, it completely flips the script on her. For instance, one of my clients, Jerome, he used to get really defensive when a girl would tease him. And he was always trying to prove to her that he was good enough. Jerome was a skinny guy, not, typically strong looking. So for instance, there was this time when a girl that he was kind of dating, and he's helping her with something, and he asks her if she wants him to carry it for her, right? It was something heavy. And she looks at him and she goes, "You sure it's not too heavy for you?" And she's kind of teasing him. But situations like that would get him very defensive, and it would almost make him overcompensate trying to prove himself. So I would tell him to try something different, because whatever he was doing was making him look very insecure about it. I said the next time something like this happens with her, either simply smile and say, "You're cute when you're wrong," and leave it at that, or just give her a smirk and ignore the comment. So next time I talk to him, he's like, "Damn, it's so funny how quickly the vibe changed when I responded to it the way you suggested." She kind of did a nervous laugh and leaned in more and became way more engaged. And why? Why did she do this? Because instead of letting her test rattle him, he stayed playful, grounded, and he showed her that his confidence wasn't dependent on her approval. This is going all the way back to the idea of frame. Is all of these things, is your identity, is your beliefs, is your confidence dependent on her reaction to you? If it is, it means your frame is weak. If you don't get rattled when she doesn't approve of you, when she tests you, when you're not getting instant validation from her, but you're still, your identity, your confidence, it doesn't seem phased, that means you have a strong frame. The key here, though, is understanding that her tests aren't about rejecting you. They're about seeing if you're the guy who stays solid under pressure. When you can do that, you send the message that I know who I am, and nothing you say or nothing you do is going to change that. And that's what makes her lean in. That's what makes it attractive. That's the invisible element that increases her attraction towards you. Okay, so tip number 3 is leading the vibe. Here's a truth about attraction. The person who leads the vibe controls the energy of the interaction. And this doesn't mean being pushy or overbearing or domineering the conversation. It's not about overpowering her. Some people think that it's about being the louder, more aggressive one. That's not what leading the vibe means. It's about confidently steering the mood and the pace of the conversation. Think about it this way. Most guys wait for the woman to set the tone, to introduce flirtation, to say something that might be a little, I call it going from the PG level to the R level. A lot of guys wait for her to say, it's okay, we can move out of this friendly PG zone. Or it means signaling that it's okay to shift into the more personal or more intimate territory. We're at that point right now, but as a man, it's your job to take that first step, to lead the vibe. But when you're leading the vibe, you're the one who initiates these shifts subtly and naturally. So let's break this down. Imagine that you're chatting with a girl and the conversation is light and playful, right? Fun, but it's still kind of friendly, PG. There's no intimacy between you and her yet. It hasn't been established that I'm a man, you're a woman, and this conversation is a sexual of nature, right? This isn't just two acquaintances having a goofy conversation. There's an undercurrent of, sexuality and attraction here. Well, you need to take the lead by adding a layer of intrigue or to say something that makes the conversation feel more intimate. For example, you might say something like, I feel like you're secretly trouble. What's something about you that I wouldn't guess at first glance? With that one question, you've gone from casual banter to something more flirtatious and personal. Now it's about you and her kind of moving to the next level. That's what leading the vibe is. If you think of a conversation, there's all these levels to it. You get to the date, you have the small talk, hey, how was your day, right? And then you got to move to the next level, and then you got to move to the next level. The point is that the ability to be the one who's moving it to that next level, to leading the vibe, that's a masculine quality, and that's what we're talking about, making her assume that you are an attractive guy, that you're a high-value guy, that you're socially intelligent. This shows her that you're not afraid to steer the interaction. There's nothing special about the words, I feel like you're secretly trouble, in that example I gave, right? It's the invisible assumption she's making in that moment. This comes easy to him. He gets it. He understands it, right? He's not intimidated by me. He must be used to getting what he wants. Leading the vibe isn't about forcing things. It's about being attuned to the moment and gradually turning up the heat. I talked about it a second ago. Being socially intelligent enough to know, okay, we had our little bit of a small talk when we sat down, but we can't stay here all night or else it's going to be a boring date. I've got to turn the heat up a little bit, right? I got to make a comment. I got to make a joke. I got to first bring us into the flirty territory. As we're in the flirty territory, now I got to be the one to kind of take it to the next level. This could mean moving, like I said, from a PG conversation to a more R-rated one. It could mean saying something that signals sexual attraction, like, wow, that perfume you're wearing is I can't think of anything else right now. You smell so good, right? That's not something you would say to your sister or your friend. You would say that to somebody you're attracted to, and at some point, leading the vibe means introducing something like that into the conversation. And when you do this right, she feels more comfortable leaning into the dynamic too. Now she can say these things to you, but if you wait all night for her to be the first one to say it, well, you're showing her that you're not capable of leading the vibe, and that sends the wrong assumption. And again, when you lead the vibe, you subtly shift her assumptions about you. She sees you as someone who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to guide the interaction towards it. This kind of certainty is magnetic. Again, like I said, they all build on each other because leading the vibe is about having that strong masculine frame, that certainty that, hey, what I'm doing is right. I don't need approval. If I try to lead the vibe and I sense that she's not ready for it, I'm not going to get all weird and fall apart. I'm going to go, okay, let's lead the vibe back a little bit. Let's reignite things and then move forward. Again, you take that, one step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You're always aware of where you're at and you're leading it, right? And being able to do this sets you apart from the guys who stay passive, hoping that she makes the first move, that she tells him it's okay. Tip number 4 is being unapologetically yourself. One of the quickest ways to lose value in a woman's eyes is by constantly second guessing yourself, by checking to see if your opinions, your interests, your actions align with what you think she wants. But the truth is, nothing makes a man stand out more than unapologetically owning who he is. Let me give you an example. Think back to the last time that you were around a guy who lit up when talking about something that he was passionate about. It could have been anything. Music, sports, woodworking. That kind of energy is magnetic. Why? because he wasn't filtering himself or trying to impress anyone. He was just fully in his element. I always say that the most attractive thing you can show a woman is raw, unfiltered personality. Give her a glimpse of your raw, unfiltered personality. Again, this goes back to this idea of the masculine frame and me saying that it's all about being. A lot of guys, when I tell them to go into the masculine frame, they think that I'm telling them, again, to play games, but really it's about being this authentic, unfiltered version of yourself who is not adjusting his behavior, not adjusting his stories or his interests based on what he thinks she's most gonna like. He's just being himself. And women notice when you have the confidence to be yourself, to share your quirks, to share your passions without that hesitation. And it makes her assume that you're secure in who you are and that you're not seeking approval to validate your worth. So let me give you a practical tip. Instead of hiding your interests or watering them down, lean into them. If you're passionate about something, no matter what it is, talk about it with conviction, not to impress her, because it's part of what makes you, you. And that's ultimately what women fall for, you, right? But you, when you're not filtering yourself through the lens of what you think is going to impress her. So when you do this, you give her a chance to connect with the real you. Again, not the version of you you think she wants. The reality is most guys are so focused on trying to fit into the reality they think she wants that they forget how powerful it is to stand out by just being yourself. When you're unapologetically yourself, you send a very clear message to her. I know who I am, and I don't need your validation to feel complete. And that's certainty. That's something she'll always find attractive. So speaking of certainty, here's tip number 5, which is mastering certainty. Here's the ultimate truth about value. The most attractive thing that you can bring to any interaction isn't a line, it isn't a look, it isn't even perfect timing. It's certainty. Certainty isn't about knowing every answer. It's not about feeling confident 100% of the time or never feeling nervous. It's about being completely comfortable with you and the reality that you're creating in that moment. It's the quiet confidence that says, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Think of it this way. Every tip that we've covered so far, assumptions, preselection, holding a strong frame, leading the vibe, being unapologetically yourself, they all come back to this core idea. Certainty is magnetic because it says, I know I'm worth it. And I assume that you see it too, so I don't feel like I have to prove myself to you. I don't have to bend who I am. I don't have to try to impress you because I know my worth and I assume that you see it too. Because when you're thinking, I assume you see it too, the invisible that she feels is he assumes I must like him. He must be used to women liking him, therefore he must have value. When you approach a woman with confidence, you're already acting like the outcome is a win. You're not second guessing yourself. You're not begging for validation. You're projecting that her interest is a given. Now contrast that with the average nice guy. He approaches like he's asking for a favor. His energy is screaming, please validate me, please like me, please tell me I'm good enough. He's so unsure of himself that he's already bracing for rejection half the time. And guess what? Women feel it. Certainty feels like leadership. Uncertainty feels like a liability. One attracts, one repels. When you operate from a place of certainty, you stop chasing approval, you stop chasing outcomes, and you start leading interactions naturally. The best part is certainty isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you build. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Here's a quick way to practice certainty. It's a simple exercise. When deciding where to eat or what to do next, don't ask endlessly, what do you want to do? Instead, confidently say, let's check out this spot I know. You'll love it, right? And if you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't have a woman right now that I can do that with, practice that with your friends. Practice it with whoever in your life you interact with. Don't wait for their approval to make your opinion known or to make your preference known. Whatever you want to do, if you want to go see a movie and you're not sure, like, don't put it through that filter of like, is it like weird that I want to see this movie? No matter what movie it is, right? Or what TV show you watch, what TV show you watching. Even if it's some weird, obscure show, don't go, well, if I say that, I have to, let me tell her this one or this, what book are you reading? Don't go into your head and go, well, what book make me sound cool? Just be legitimate. Have the attitude of, because I'm reading it, makes it a good book. Because I like the TV show, it makes it a cool TV show. Because I want to go this lounge or this club, that's what makes it cool, right? This projects certainty by showing that you can take the lead without hesitation. It signals that you're not seeking approval, but you're assuming that she's going to enjoy the experience because you've got it handled, right? It's what you want. So here's the big takeaway. Everything that we've talked about today, whether it's sparking her interest through preselection, holding a strong frame, leading the vibe, being unapologetically yourself, or mastering certainty, all comes down to one thing: the assumptions she makes about you. The problem a lot of guys face with women is all the invisible stuff that causes her to make negative assumptions about you. If you don't understand why a woman is losing interest and you're playing it in your head and you're saying I did everything right, I can almost guarantee it's because you're doing things that are making her make negative assumptions. It's the invisible game that you are losing. But when you focus on how you're showing up, how you carry yourself, how you interact, and the vibe that you bring, those subtle cues shape the way she perceives you. And the best part is, you don't have to prove anything. When you operate from this place, her assumptions will naturally work in your favor. And if you're ready to take this even further, I've got something special for you. I've created a free class that dives deep into the idea of value, status, and perception. How women and people in general make assumptions about you, and how what you do can shape these assumptions in your favor. I got a link to the free class in the description below. And in this class, you're gonna learn how to project the characteristics of a high value man so that you're naturally seen as somebody worth respecting. How to communicate your value effortlessly without trying to impress, because trying too hard only lowers your status. How to build a reputation over time as that socially powerful, high value guy, whether it's in your social circle or in your dating life. We'll get deeper into the most important tests that she's gonna throw at you and exactly how to pass them with certainty. The truth is, perception is everything. When you know how to control the way you're perceived, you stop chasing approval and you start commanding attention. So if you wanna learn how to control the assumptions women make about you, check out the link below in the free class. And as always, if you like this video, hit subscribe, leave me a comment, and let me know what you'd like to see in the next video.